And we are live.
Welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show, where we help top leaders find their pathway to incredible success and a lifetime of happiness. Here is your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
All right, I always get excited when I hear that bumper music in the studio. Welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show, everybody. We are live streaming today. Live streaming is next generation broadcasting. You're going to find us today right now on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. And for all of those out there who will join live, just get in the chat box, send us some questions. Let us know you're there. We might feature that in the show. Today's broadcast is actually coming as a collaboration. It's a special two-part series, everybody. And it is a brain experiment. It's in collaboration with ION, that's ION, the International Organization of Neuroscience. I'm a founding fellow in ION, and also it's in collaboration with the NPN Hub. Now, I know, I don't like jargon and information. The brain already gets confused enough. NPN stands for neuroplasticians. The NPN Hub is actually a website where we're inviting people from around the world who understand a lot about neuroplasticity in the brain to come together. And what they're doing is they're coming together in this website into hubs, and they're hanging out, they're learning from each other. The other mission of ION and the NPN Hub is to get rid of the pseudoscience. If you've ever looked into brain science, which is what I mean by neuroscience, there is lots of research. It's an untapped, trailblazing area of science. And yet there's a lot of people out there who are using it, using language that is pseudoscience. It's not really based on research and facts. And so that is the mission at NPN Hub and part of the ION. What we're going to do today is we're going to have an experiment. So I'm going to set this up for you before we bring our guests on the screen. And you're not going to hear me doing their bios today. They'll be included in the final show. There's a reason for this. So we have today 3 guests. These 3 guests are coming from all parts of the world. One is from New Zealand, and the other 2 are from the United States of America. And of course, I'm here in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Amazing. Think about that from a brain point of view. We call that's a diverse collection of brains. You know, we can call that neurodiversity in terms of what we have in our minds comes from different parts of the world. They haven't met each other before. They don't know much about each other, and part of the experiment is we haven't given them any information. However, they might have seen the show notes, which have the bios of each other. Let me ask you a question, everybody. Have you ever wondered how the brain's internal systems create what happens in our outside world? And how do we interact in conversations with other people? Let me give you something to think about here. I believe this is true. I'd like to know what you think. But nothing happens in the business world or in the real world. The very first thing is a conversation between 2 people. Many people are in business or in life. They talk about goals and visions and all this stuff. But the truth is nothing happens until we have a conversation with 2 people. Here's some fun facts for you. Roughly 40 to 50% of all marriages, first marriages, end up in divorce. Now, I'm putting myself in that category because 7 years, that's what happened with me. What is the percentage in your mind? Think about this. What's the percentage of people that end up in divorce the second time? Are you thinking about it? It's over 80%. And here's the crazy part with COVID, where we're isolated. We have now been spending more time with our partners and probably having more conversations than we've ever had before. Feeling misunderstood. Not being able to maybe connect and understand each other emotionally. The last statistic is something all these leaders on here today may have some thoughts on too. And that is most people we know that we've talked to and research shows leave their jobs because of conflict, communication issues with other people. Not because of pay, not because of all those other things, but because of conversations and difficulties. Now, whether they're fired or they end up finding their way out, that's a fact. So here's a thought. What if I told you the untapped systems of the brain can increase a leader's ability to communicate, to influence the other person, build trust quickly, and keep that fear default down, because we're all brains are developed for survival, looking for danger first, not for happiness. When we start conversating or interacting with somebody else, our brains inside are looking for, where's the danger, where's the fear. We're looking at each other's body language, we're listening to what they say. Our brain is actually taking in from the outside world through, I hate to put it this way, the holes in our head. When I was a kid, my mama said, you got a couple extra holes in your head there, Tommy. Well, picture the outside world. What comes in to your brain comes in through your eyes, through your ears, you listen, through taste, through smell, and of course the senses in our fingers. Now think about this. Your brain's number one job is to tell you what's happening, predict what's happening on the outside world. So all this comes in, and in milliseconds, the brain decides, is there danger there? And then the brain, through the nervous system, tells you what to do. It tells you, I need to move this arm. I need to say these words. I need to freeze in fear because there's something going on. That's the power of what's happening in this. Yet we know today that most business leaders aren't taught to communicate through the perspective of the brain first. We were never taught that. What could happen if we actually learn to communicate and communicate through the understanding of the power of the brain's systems? What would happen if that were to happen? Pretty amazing. All right, now I'm going to bring on the three. That was my intro for the morning, everyone. I'm going to bring on our guests today, and there they are. So, gentlemen, welcome.
Thanks for having us, Tom.
All right, Dr. Amin Sanaia, where are you coming from?
Currently, I'm calling in from Florida.
Fantastic. And Greg Pitcher, where are you at?
Auckland, New Zealand, 6:30 a.m. on a Friday.
All right, we appreciate you being here. 6:30 a.m.
Saturday. That's what.
Saturday. Thank you. And Dr. Ladine, I think I know, but tell us again, where are you at?
San Francisco, California.
Fantastic. All right, everybody, here's the brain experiment. 3 leaders, never met before, 3 brains, and the attempt to communicate and shift each other. So let's have fun with this. We've assigned some roles. Mr. Greg Pitcher from New Zealand, Saturday in New Zealand. Greg is going to be the observer. And Greg will be observing the conversation that Amin and Clint will be having between each other. Here's what we've given Amin and Clint. And by the way, the instructions were sent out only 24 hours ago. We didn't want them to prepare. As if they're meeting for the first time for coffee or in a business setting, they're talking to each other. They're going to have 10 minutes to have a conversation. Our job, and Greg's as the observer, is to observe the conversation. We've told Greg that he's not to make notes, because as his head's down, he's not leaning in and catching the conversation, catching the body language. Once the conversation ends, we're going to thank the Amin and Clint. We're going to bring Greg back on, and then I'll explain to you what we're going to do in the next segment, which is really to have a conversation about what just happened. So on that note, I'm going to put Greg in the green room. Greg, just give me a thumbs up that you can still hear us. All right. And I think I am going to go in the green room too. And so I will, let me just do that, guys. I can edit this little part. So Clint, when I go off the screen, if I talk, give me a thumbs up if you can hear. Okay. So we're going to set it up now. So I'm going to count backwards from 5. When I say 1, I'm going to disappear, and the clock starts, and you have 10 minutes. So have a lot of fun, guys. Audience, enjoy. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Dr. Amin, pleasure to meet you. Hey, to start with, tell me a little bit about your journey to becoming a doctor. What made you want to do that? Tell me a little bit about that journey.
Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words. It's a pleasure being here with you. So my journey, I think, started when I was when I moved to the United States. So I moved to the United States, not by choice, when I was 8 years old, and I went from having a very nice life in where I'm from in Dominican Republic, and going to start a new life in New York City, and there was a lot of struggles through that journey.
Can I just stop you there? That had to be an amazing change going from the Dominican Republic. I'm obviously there's cities, but I'm sure it's beautiful aesthetically, trees, beaches, nature, and then going to one of the most metropolitan cities in the world, 9 million people. That had to be quite a change.
Oh, in so many ways. I mean, it's so many ways. Yes, what you're saying is correct. Not only the aesthetics, the environment, um, living in the Caribbean, perfect weather year round. It's just so amazing. But then, like I mentioned earlier, we live very nice, very comfortable. And when we went to New York City, now willingly, uh, there was some shocks. So we went from living in a nice house to going to about 700 square foot apartment. Uh, my late father, my mom, my late brother, my sister, and me, and that was different. I've never lived in an apartment in my life.
Can I ask you? So I used to work in the Tenderloin here in San Francisco. It's the inner city here. Work with a lot of SRO buildings, single room occupancies. You might be familiar with that term.
Yes.
And so I've seen the inside of some of these smaller apartments in a very urban setting. And, I can just, even now, I was there 13 years, I can see the people packed into a small room, the people in the hallway sharing the bathroom in the hallway, a lot of noise outside, the sirens. Kind of take me in that apartment, and what, for somebody that's never been into the inner city or into an apartment, what's that like visually?
So, visually, so
And
picture.
smells and sights,
Yeah,
yeah, all of
yeah.
it.
So picture living in an apartment, but you're living in a bedroom, basically, like if a typical bedroom in your house, but everyone lives there. Um, it smells horrid because we're inner city, in New York City, rat filled, roaches everywhere. Uh, the conditions are not the best. And at that time, I mean, if we wanted something done in your apartment, you did it yourself. There's no one that's coming to fix anything.
Mm.
There's some winter days that there's no heating. The heating's not working. So guess what? You just kind of cover, bundle up as much as you can. But on top of all that, I know you mentioned the sirens, the noises, and whatever. We actually live in a very rough neighborhood where the police didn't come to to where the block where I lived. If
Right.
they came, they're coming at least 50 to 60 of them at a time. So because right across the street, the building right across the street was a drug haven.
Yeah.
So they had a big place there, drug lords. So everyone that I grew up with is either dead or in jail.
Uh,
No
wow.
one else other
Yeah.
than my late brother, my sister, and then a couple of my cousins that lived next door. Um, just about it. We're probably the only ones that got out of that type of environment.
Wow.
Uh, yeah. So
I mean, do you also, I'm just thinking about when I was down there for 13, right? My kids also, we had a school there, right, in this Tenderloin district, the worst district in the city. My kids went to school there, and we used to have to navigate, and maybe this could have been the case with you. My kids were accustomed to weaving in and out of drug dealers, prostitutes, stepping over needles. Feces was very common in the city down here, navigating those type of things. People just yelling at the top of their lungs for no reason. Did you also see some of that and experience some of that stuff, as well as many other things?
we had a saying in the neighborhood that once you got robbed or held at gunpoint or a knife, then yeah, welcome to the neighborhood.
you,
Yeah.
you've earned your stripes, huh?
Yeah,
You're a real New York resident of that
absolutely.
district, borough.
Yeah, it happened to me twice. The other funny part is that you lived as if you grew up there. You knew that you never put a wallet in the back of your pants because it was gone. You didn't
Uh,
put anything in the back of your pants. Anything that was important to you, it was in your front pockets where you had you were holding it. You don't wear backpacks because they're gone.
yeah, yeah,
It's just survival of the fittest. That's all.
yeah.
That's how I can describe it.
I remember too. Just one thing my kids would say as well. There, we go out to maybe to the suburbs where I was originally from and stuff, and they'd be like, "Wow, it's weird. Nobody has asked us for money or bugged us for anything in the last right since we've been here. That's quite uncommon."
So just to wrap this up a little bit, because I want to ask you about your upbringing and how did you get to where you are. Yeah, so going from having a lot as a young child and having nothing and really going through some hard times, that shaped me, and that just every day that it's in my mind, I remember vividly some of those days. This is why I got to the point where I'm at, is because I'm driven that my family will never have to experience that what we had to go through.
Yeah, and was there in that, and then I'll share mine. Was there a watershed moment? Because, like you said, a lot of your neighbors, colleagues, or right, they maybe got involved in some other stuff. Was there a watershed moment that you remember? You're like, okay, I'm gonna do some different things than what some of my friends or some of my neighbors are getting involved in.
It wasn't as much as my friends as it was my late father. So my mom, my dad, my mom was a university professor. My dad was president of the largest labor union in Dominican Republic, and that's why we got kicked out of the country. We came to New York City. My mom had to go work in a sweatshop, and my dad had a slip and fall accident and became disabled for life. That was my watershed moment.
Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. That had to be. I can't even imagine. How did you? What? Yeah, when you
It was
found
it was
out.
it was, it was crazy because I didn't know anything, but we felt it. Some nights we didn't have dinner. I
Mm,
mean, it was
that-
real.
yeah, that's a lot of real life. And what? Yeah, what do you tell people that maybe are going through a similar thing, or the right, for many things people could say the cards were stacked against you. That's a lot to overcome. What do you tell people that might be starting the starting point of their journey where you were at?
One thing is that I you have to pray whatever your fill your spiritual bucket,
Mm,
and try to make the positive out of everything you have. That's one thing why I consider my dad my hero. My
mm,
mom is, no matter what, no matter how bad the odds got stacked against them, we got through it. We persevered. We did it, and I'm so proud of them.
that's an amazing story. Congratulations, and very inspiring. And I know we're got like a couple minutes. I'll just tell you mine. I did, although we live in the city, I grew up in the suburbs quite differently. And so I wanted my kids to experience a little bit something different. To be honest, you can imagine the suburbs, everybody looked like me. It was very, typical 70s and 80s. Imagine kids on bikes. You remember that time? Or are you too young, Doctor? I mean,
No,
kids
yes,
on bikes, right? Out into the street light, driving across town, no cares in the world. Parents didn't know where you're at, swimming. And in many ways, that traditional 70s, 80s kind of upbringing. And my wife's from the city, and so I wanted my kids to get to know something different, and get a little bit of that grit and some of the real life that we see in the city. And so we've been here now for 30 years, and my kids, like I said, grew up in the city and love it and enjoy it. And don't know if we're going to leave. We like the sights, the sounds, the smells, the real life of the city as well.
Yeah, I don't miss any of that stuff, and I probably if I have a choice, I will not live in a big city. I think for obvious reasons.
Right?
Yeah.
I understand. I have a family that they don't like to come to the city. I'm believing it's because of the city, not me, but yeah, they're like, nah, bro, we're not coming out there.
So can I ask you something? The minute we got on camera, you have a sign behind you that says core values.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that? It's just my eyes are just focused on that.
Oh yeah, I was, I was going over with an organization, a nonprofit in the city, and they were just getting started, and they were at the beginning point, and so just going through it with them on how they starting this organization. And of course, right, one of the things that you mentioned is having those values in alignment so you can grow and know where you're going. And so that was just an exercise that we went through, and you could see the Post-it notes of the things that were important to them that would be guiding as they grow and develop. And now I'm going to get a little excited because that was about a year ago, and now they are, I was just talking to the leaders, they have just launched a 5-year, $3 million fundraising campaign. And so that's exciting to see them go from, hey, we have this dream and we're doing something, to, all right, and they've been doing it for a year, and now they're trying to go big. And so very excited about that.
That is so cool.
Thank you for asking. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so cool.
Yeah.
I think we're at the 10-minute mark. Do we continue, or there it is?
I think that's good. Pleasure meeting you, Dr. Amin. Thank you.
Likewise. Yeah. We got to have more conversations.
Amen. Love that story.
Dr. Amin is, or both of you guys are right on. But being the producer, you reminded me of the time. I was enjoying the conversation so much. I'm going to bring our observer back in. Hey, Greg, can unmute there. Guys, keep unmuted. I was enjoying the conversation so much, I just lost track of time. All right, so we're going to now go to the second segment. And the second segment, into our audience, I'm just going to set this up. Greg was set some instructions on to observe. So Greg, I'm just going to lead if it's okay, and I'm going to ask you some evocative questions just to get you sharing. Would you be okay with that? Yes?
Let's
Greg?
rock on.
All right, to our two guests, when Greg is doing some sharing, if you have something you want to add in there, just put your hand up and cue us, and I'll find your way in. Okay, so he might say something, and you might have something you want to add to support that. Totally okay with that. Let's go for about 10 minutes. The first question, Greg, just an open one, is tell us what you observed in terms of the emotional connection, and I'm looking also at the body language and the physical, or the actual words and language. What did you observe between the two?
There was this common understanding of what they've both been through, and a link of camaraderie that came through from having experienced similar things. And you could see that when one person was talking about it, the other person was thinking about their experience, their perspective, and you could see that there was a connection through the common purpose or the common shared experiences. And it was also amazing to just see some of the emotion that when you were thinking about some of the hardships that you'd been through, there seemed to be a bit of a protective pattern that came through, because you both laugh about those situations. And that is very interesting, because they were pretty tough times. but you both laugh at them. So yeah, it's either a built-in mechanism or it's a protection mechanism because they were so hard.
Yeah, thanks, Greg. I'm going to just jump in there. I'm going to bring on the screen here another camera. You see this? I've got a book here, you guys.
Yes.
So one of the things the experiment was about, and we didn't be specific, but the experiment was communicate in any way you want. But I believe, Clint, you had extra instructions. Tell the audience what I asked you to do specifically.
Yeah, I was trying to, in my own personal sharing, and to try to get storytelling, to try to use images and to try to convey things through storytelling's imagery, so that they could kind of be placed and, sense the things that we're going through or have been, or I didn't know what way the conversation was going to go. But my main purpose was try to incorporate storytelling and imagery into our conversation so that people could sense, feel what's going on.
And thank you, Clint. And Dr. Amin, the instructions I sent to you, there wasn't a specific instructions in addition. So I didn't specifically say, use a style of storytelling. I wanted to see how you as just a business leader actually communicated. Greg, question back to you. Make some conclusions or just observations about how you saw both of them. Who used storytelling more than the other? Did they use it equally? Did you get a sense that one would say something and the other would reply with a story? Did one use just facts? And before you answer that, for the audience, we're going to get into this next episode with Dr. Elvis Einstein. Fact is not a story. So if we talk with facts, it's not a story. Fact plus emotion, and in the word emotion is the word motion, which means to move. Fact plus emotion equals story. That's it, period. So I'm going to just read out of this book, and then, Greg, you're so awesome, I'm going to give it back to you. This is a book. It's a textbook from a cognitive behavioral therapy program, a program I was actually in with 20 other people because of my experience with mental illness after a brain injury. So we need to look at what emotions did we see. So I'm going to throw out, there's a list of emotions here: joy, anger, fear, sadness, shame, guilt. In the joy bucket, for example, cheerful, blissful, amused, delighted, eager, ecstatic, exhilarated, etc. So, Greg, give us a sense, what emotions did you see out of these two guys? And just try to be specific with each of them. I think you already touched on one about how one of them used laughter to chuckle about some painful points.
Yeah. Also, when Dr. Amin was talking about his father, you could feel that sadness. And you could see Clint responded to that sadness as well. And so the emotion helped Dr. Clint to connect with that situation and bring the appropriate response.
Thank you, Greg. I mean, why don't we get you to unmute there and just talk about what, in respect to emotions you felt, talk about, you can identify a magic moment or something he said, or just talk about just what you experienced, what kind of emotions, and did it come when he was just saying facts or when he was actually telling a story, anything at all? I mean?
Yeah, so the emotions were, as I was telling the story, kind of reliving some of those moments. And when you start speaking about it, then you see the picture in your mind, and then the emotion comes. And it was in various parts. Dr. Clint threw me off for, on a loop at the beginning. So I was like, oh my God, this is like, I'm not doing this again.
And Clint, thank you. And Clint, how did you feel? Basically, I'll just read this out and then you can riff on it, Clint. I wrote down here, Amin spoke about the small apartment in New York. And then Clint, because you were asked to tell stories, you were asked to listen to something he said and then have that evoke something in you. to skill. So you said how you work in the tenderloin. I always think of a cow when you say that, just like Canadian beef. I've seen the inside of those apartments, and you started talking, and I was watching his body language. It's like there's this big connection. So Clint, talk about that moment, when he said that.
As you said, I immediately immediately connected because for 13 years I was in those buildings, in those apartments with my brothers and sisters, doing Bible studies, taking food, up and so there was just immediately that connection and a pull towards him, that we had something in common. And so, and right now I'll go deeper. Personally, just brought me back. That was a great time in our lives, and the kids were younger, and
Yep.
They were all in school down there. So a lot, you can see me getting emotional now. It's just a lot to it. A lot of the people I'm going even further. A lot of the people we impacted, the tough times that were there that people went through. And, so across the board, from a lot of highs and fun, a lot of stuff we did on the street to, as Dr. Amin said, a lot of real life stuff happening down there.
Yeah, so I'm going to give it back to Greg in just a moment. I want to just summarize that. So, I mean, when he, like you made that comment just now, oh, I don't want to go through this again. But clearly, everybody, what we're illustrating is Clint used the power of storytelling. So he listened to something Amin said, added those facts into his brain, came up with his own facts, real story, added emotion, and that connection right there happened. Can you guys, Greg, can you imagine, Greg, and you tell me if you've seen this in business, where two people get together like this and they're talking, but it's all facts. It's all facts. So where do you live? Hey, what do you do? And none of the emotional storytelling. Do you observe that in business? Because that's the big difference we're seeing here.
Absolutely. When you first start working with teams or people that you meet, often people connecting are because there's not that connection, there's not that trust. People will only share so much, and it's just that those first things are not emotionally connected.
Thank you.
It's just starting the process.
Yes. We can go deeper dive on that next time too, guys. Is that there's this thing about vulnerability, particular men in business. We don't want to talk about things personal. It's not tough. Amin, put up your hand. I think I just may have stepped on your thought. What did you have to say?
Oh, I want to speak about that briefly. What you just mentioned, I mean, get out of my head.
Yeah.
So there's this in business, we're seeing as when you're a leader, you can be vulnerable. Like, no, you have to be this tough guy. You have to know everything, and you can't have any emotions. And that is so far-fetched. That's not even the reality, because the great leaders, people are able to resonate with them. So these people are vulnerable. They tell their stories. There is nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. And that's one of the things at the core of what I try to teach is that put yourself out there. There's nothing wrong with being vulnerable. You will get to, people will get to resonate with you. And guess what? They're gonna follow you.
Yeah. That's well said. Clint, you get that too, right? As far as the vulnerability, because for you to be able to, would it be fair to say for you to be able to share a story that involved your own personal experience, you have to be comfortable with that, right?
Yeah, most definitely. It takes a lot of humility to be able to be vulnerable, but the connections happen. I just had that last week with a gentleman, and I try to make it a point to share something to make myself vulnerable, to be able to connect with people. And it ended up being a great meeting because we went into some things about family and other things that resonated with him as well. And all because of that risk, taking that small risk and saying, hey, I'm going to exhibit some humility and be a little bit vulnerable at but the big payoff is a connection with somebody, a deep connection.
Yeah, thank you. I'll go back to you, Greg.
Yeah, I was just thinking some of the observations while businesses are under pressure and accelerated change is happening all around us is that it's, I need this result now. The emotional connection is not there. There's apart from fear, there's a lot of let's get this result now, and people are just not being part of it. It's just a result-driven thing, and through that, because we haven't got that connection, it's either going to be short-term or people are just going to walk.
Yeah, great observation. Let me ask Clint and then Amin second, and just a yes or no answer. Yes or no, Clint, was there any point in time where you experienced fear or you were anxious or anything that was a negative feeling that you can recall?
Yes.
Okay, tell us.
Making cold calls.
Oh, sorry. I have to rephrase the question. I mean, when you're conversating with Amin.
Oh, okay.
You know what I was thinking? I was thinking that, did you leave and just go make 10 cold calls? You're an awesome salesman, man. You got to teach us that. How are you doing that? He's like this mind melding. No, just so again, the answer is yes or no. Did you have any negative emotions? So again, they are things like anger, fear, sadness, shame, guilt, and there's a whole bunch of different feelings that come with that in any part of the conversation.
No, I did not experience those.
And Amin, what about you?
Sadness, yes, because I got to relive some of those moments in my mind. That's about it. Fear, no.
Okay. Really, really important, you guys, because one of the things when you see the tape back, I want everybody, and Greg, I'll ask you this question to comment on. I was watching deeply your body language because I'm a visual learner too, but the brain takes in, remember what I said, visually, right? So I was really looking at your faces, and I saw a lot of things. I saw pain in Amin's face in a few situations. I also saw Clint, you were sort of having this happy kind of party going on when you were talking about one of the stories with him, and then he told you something about his dad's health and stuff, and your face, man, just changed, and you went into the state of some sadness. It's very interesting when you watch this back how you two gentlemen actually reacted to that. Did you pause? Did you breathe? Did you let the pain be experienced? Clint, did you empathize with him to make a deeper connection? All these things are really fascinating. Greg, comment on that. What did you see in terms of any negative emotions, body language or audio?
Before I go there, I know I did observe myself as well, because obviously I'm very much auditory. I kept turning my ear when there was something really that caught my attention. I would go like this. I noticed that was happening with me. And one of the things was, for example, Dr. Clint talked about feces on the street and things like that. And that, I remember that vividly. But as far as I saw Dr. Amin, when he was thinking about some of the experiences, his eyes would go to one of the sides, and he was visualizing what that was like. And at times there'd be laughter, and the laughter was when he was either in sadness or that he was joyful for where he is now. With Dr. Clint, he was using his hands to help express some of these things. And at the very beginning, when he first started, I connected with this, being in, I think it was Demonica, I can't remember the name of the place exactly, but palm trees around, beautiful sun, beaches, and things like this, which helped connect that initial view. And because I'd connected to that, and then suddenly we went down deep into a different world, it made that story so much more impactful.
Yeah. You guys realize that you were talking for about 13 minutes? Did it feel like that? No, right? No. See, what happens is when you get into the storytelling with the emotional connection, the brain, the times, like the place and time can stand still. And then that's really the power of of the story. I want to just comment on something I wrote down here again. Greg, chime in on it if you have to. This thing about chuckling and kind of having that, you got this way about you, but we'll talk about it more in the next episode too. But there's this thing called the brain is a prediction machine, and so what you're both doing in a conversation, I'm just telling you what I know, is for example, Amin's being asked a question by Dr. Clint in a little story or whatever, and your brain is trying to figure out, okay, what's he going to do next? What's he going to do next? What's he going to do next? The brain has to predict. That's what it does. And so, for example, if somebody's walking down the street, you see them walking, your brain says, okay, they're going to keep walking. They're going to keep walking. If a banana peel's there and they slip on it and fall down, as long as they don't break their leg, your brain, that's called a benign failure of prediction in scientific terms. And when the brain trips up like that, and as long as it's benign, it actually wants to laugh. It chuckles. And what's really interesting is we study the brain science behind it. Amin was probably expecting some things more and more and more. Didn't expect that to come up. And then you kind of laughed a little bit. So there's more going on there too. In public speaking, you use humor to let the audience release because it's painful. So you guys do a fabulous job. But my point all around with all of that is that by using storytelling, look at what it's doing. It's evoking all these emotions, experiences, and things that you would normally not see happen in a 10-minute conversation. Greg, back to you. I just want to ask you this question. Think, feel, and do. Think, feel, and do. It's actually something in the TED Talks program. What did seeing these two gentlemen talk, anything at all, just keep it tight. When you look back, what did they make you think, feel, and was there anything they sort of inspired you to do, when they were done? Anything that popped out?
So thinking, I'm grateful that I'm in New Zealand and haven't had to go through some of those situations. Feeling, wow, that's real life. That's tough. And doing was, I want to hear more. So that was what I sort of got from.
Let's go to you. I mean, think, feel, and do after it all. And again, now we're tapping into recall. Storytelling makes you remember how he made you feel certain things. But think, feel, do. Tell us what's on your mind.
I think I didn't expect for this to go the way you did. As far as the feeling, oh my God, it was like a roller coaster of emotions as I was storytelling or matching, visualizing what Clint was telling me about his story. And do is I like Greg. I mean, I want to hear more from three of you.
Awesome, Clint.
Thinking, I love neuroscience. I love this stuff. Fantastic. The feeling. I just love Dr. Amin's story of coming over New York in the borough there, and then what he's done to get his doctorate. I love those type of stories. It's so inspiring. And then the do is like, man, his story has to keep going, and all of us have to keep lifting people up and telling them they can do it, man. And whatever it is, their job, their life. Like right now, I'm just excited. Like, oh yeah, let's start coaching some people. They can do it. Look what Dr. B, right? So now I'm excited to continue on with our lifting people up and making them better. So
yeah, very interesting. The whole experience of think, feel, and do. The one thing I want to just bring this to a close with, and then we'll talk about the little feedback from you guys in the wrap up. Sorry, go ahead, Amin.
What about you?
What about me? What about me? I'm here. All right. So thinking. So this is just from the production room. So as I'm going through this, part of my thinking is self-focused because I didn't have the role of observer. So I have some disability with my vision. So I'm worrying about the technical stuff and things not working. I was worrying about when the time was going over. I was thinking like, oh my God, do I interrupt these guys or not? So that's my personality trait, is worrying. However, I was thinking, oh my goodness, this thing is going to bomb or it's going to work, because what we're trying to prove is, does storytelling affect the outcome, connecting you guys? I asked Clint one thing in the pre-work that I didn't ask you to do, Amin, and that was to get something deep out of you. And man, when you nailed it, I went, oh, I was almost in tears. Like, this is going to be so good when the doc comes and looks at it, because here's what happened. Clint, you did such a good job carrying on with the deepening of the story. I mean, I've talked to you before, but it took a while on the radio show I did with you. But when you said about you were kicked out of your country and your dad was the head of a labor union and your dad's stroke, I would imagine that that's not something you show up in every conversation and tell people, correct? I would imagine that you only do that because Clint and you trust, and something connected and clicked where you kind of liked him, and you felt safe and comfortable telling them. Would that be fair?
Without a doubt. I mean, that's why it took me a little bit to kind of get going at first.
So Clint, you did. I don't know if you know. I don't know if you know you did it or if it was intentional. Go ahead.
I didn't even know I was supposed to go deep. I didn't read the instructions fully. I just thought it was a little imagery. So honestly, that I didn't even know that I was supposed to do that.
That puts a bow on the experiment, because what I asked Clint to do, and it may not have been exactly clear, was as you're doing your storytelling and talking, see if you can get him to reveal things about himself. And that, even if you hadn't read that, it proves the power of storytelling. We didn't script that. That look what he revealed. And I have people all the time on my radio show, you guys, that don't reveal. They'll hold, like, I'll give you one example. I just interviewed a fellow from the United States. He's a lawyer with state and will planning. He's also a counselor to the Supreme Court. He's written like 19 books, 15 grandchildren. I mean, we're talking about all this stuff. And after the show, I say, can you consider reading my book? I'd love to get to know my story a bit. And then we were talking and we were sharing stuff. So I started talking to him offline about my brain injury. And I said, today I didn't wear glasses, but I just want to let you know, the time flew, but it was so hard because I couldn't quite, like, you didn't see the show, guys, but at the end I put the intro music on instead of the outro music. And I was an ass, so I had to redo it. And so I started revealing vulnerability and telling him that. And you know what he said to me? You got to see the replay. He said, now that we're talking personally, and his wife died 4 years ago from ALS. He's just remarried. He said, I just want to tell you, I can't read. He's got 3 degrees. He's a lawyer, and he's on my show. He's doing all this stuff, written 19 books, and he shocks me and says, I can't read. And it started making sense because planning the show with him, there were some little bumps about back and forth. That only came out because of the fact that my brain heard something and said something, but I added emotion, made him feel, and then he brought out his thing. He never said it on the show. He only said it afterwards, which means he wasn't quite ready. But you can see the power. Fantastic stuff you guys did here today. Let's move to the wrap up, and thanks for spending so much extra time. Greg.
I just wanted to share one thing. In today, with all the communications we have, social interactions can be real time. So even just conversations on Messenger, you can start to because it's real time. It's not an email where you're reading it and having to think about it. But if it's real time, it's what your perception of it is immediately.
Yeah.
And that also comes into how we communicate. So it's not even just over Messenger, you can feel what somebody's saying.
Yeah. Wonderful. Again, my brain had slipped up, guys, short-term memory, but think, feel, and do. So what I was thinking about, because I knew both of you guys, is I was really thinking, is Amin going to say what his real story is? And I was thinking, what is Clint going to do? Is he going to listen to the instructions, or is he going to just do his own thing? I was trying to, all that thinking was going on. I felt the emotion, especially the visual image in my mind of the feces. I mean, I got to have lunch now, guys. And it was like that. If you want to know if I ask you, what are you going to remember how he made you feel? You'll remember that in a week. And I know that the one thing that I'll take away and remember, I won't remember most of the things you said, is the story about the New York apartment. I can actually visualize it. And then Clint, you drew it. Those pictures now are etched. That's what I'll remember. And for some reason, the word feces stands out almost like an anchor to that. Greg?
Just one other thing is, so what you've connected there is that being a visual person, the story that was visual was most to you. To me, it was hearing it was the most to me. And we all have slightly different ways.
We learn differently. Fantastic. Yeah, that's very good. The facts are we remember facts about storytelling makes you remember facts about 20%, 20 times more, because you did a good job with it both. You're drawing pictures with words, and when you put visual together with, even if Greg, that's not his primary learning style, you guys, even when you're coaching or doing your business, the person with you is going to remember, 20 times more what you said, but they're not going to remember the words. They're going to remember those emotional points. You guys will remember each other that way. The feel part, I felt all sorts of emotions. This is not meant to be punitive by any way, but I'm watching body language. There's a couple times, Clint, you have a really wonderful way, but when you started doing this, I got a little pissed, because I remember that, like my dad in school, that's what the brain does, right? Is I'm going like, stop doing that. And then Amin, you were sort of, a couple of times you were sort of there, and I'm going like, wake up, say something. What are you doing? Are you going to say anything? And that, again, is what we'll talk about next time. That's not a criticism, but I bet you guys have different ways that your brains process information. Mm-hmm. And I guarantee you that that's part of what's at play there. Different ways of processing. One needs more time to respond and think, etc. Greg?
Just one thing. Even though visual, auditory, whatever the way is, we all connect to the feeling part of it.
Yeah.
So whatever we learn, so hearing, I still connect to the emotions and the feeling part of it. So that's interesting, but it doesn't matter what style that we have that we take it in. But it's important to know that everybody has their own styles. But the storytelling and emotion will connect in some way.
Yeah, that's the experiment. You guys, as far as I'm concerned, it was an absolute success. You nailed it. And back there's some things you can read I might send you, but back, if you remember, in time, there was no pen and no paper. There was no typewriter internet. And so communicating between people was done, a lot of it was done with stories. I mean, that's how the world started out, and we've gotten away from that. But if you can hack the brain and learn to make it your main communication style, there's tremendous more things that you're going to get out of relationships. Let's talk about next episode, and then we'll see if we can work it out. We're going to have the tape review to have Dr. Elvis Einstein back, and we'll have all of you back to now look at the parts of the brain and see when these things are happening, what's happening in the amygdala, what's happening in the prefrontal cortex, showing you the systems of the brain and why when you did what you did, it created the reaction. Do you guys think that'll be a good exercise?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. So let me finish up the show here, and then we're going to talk offline, just talk about when we can do that. So last word for you, Greg. Anything at all before we go to wrap?
This is going to be an amazing journey, is learning about storytelling and how we can take the storytelling to make better connections and how to connect with people, because it's missing in the world.
Awesome. Dr. Ladine?
Yeah, this is going to be a nugget for some people out there, and they're going to go to have even more success because of the things they learn from this.
Fantastic. Dr. Sanaia?
Just two things. Eager to hear Dr. Einstein and get the results. And two, just ecstatic having to get to know a little bit about Greg and Clint.
Oh, wonderful. And we'll try to get Greg talking more about his own journey, because it's pretty fantastic, everybody. So everybody, thanks for being with us on the Quiet Warrior Show. Again, we're collaborating with ION and the NPN Hub, the Neuroplastician Hub. And you'll see us back again. Stay tuned for episode 2. And find the gift of storytelling like you see these gentlemen have done, and live your true life with purpose and passion, and live the life that you deserve and desire. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Quiet Warrior Show. Create is a motive-based leadership development firm. www.kreat.ca.
right, Steb, I can take it offline.